Um, our next speaker, or the keynote speaker of today, is Boris Bogaert. And he successfully managed several startups and has been involved in the first internet solutions and commercializing them since the early 90s. And Boris has always been passionate about launching new innovative products for the B2B markets. And today he's CEO and co-founder of Cardwise, which is a company that has commercializes expenditure, an SES product, a fast-growing product to manage your expenses. And building upon all that experience, Boris is now going to tell us how startups, but actually any firm, can leverage the opportunities that the era of cloud will give them. Boris.
Thank you. So maybe, yeah, I'll stay fixed here. So my name is Boris Bogaert. I'm co-founder and CEO of Cardwise, the holding above expenditure. We're going to tell you something more about startups and the era of the cloud. I think it's important to tell first something about expenditure, because I will refer quite a lot on the experience we had, successes we had, failures we had, and it's important to understand what it is, what the solution is. So what is expenditure? Expenditure is in fact an online and mobile expense management solution where we in fact are automizing the complete process of expense management. You just take a picture of a receipt, can be everything, an invoice. We are reading out all relevant data. It's in fact based on intelligent receipt scanning, and we are automizing the complete process from receipt to accounting. So we did already quite some integrations with ERP packages and others. We were founded in 2011 by myself and Winder Kinderen. We have now customers already in 29 countries. We launched the product itself, expenditure, it's now a year and a half ago. Before we were really developing on it and have beta testing. We have our headquarters in Mechelen, and we just opened offices last week in New York. We opened offices via joint venture in Sao Paulo, and also open offices in Germany, Köln, where we have local people supporting the product in the languages. Some references: we have quite some customers in the Benelux already, like SAS Software, Belgaug is a customer, our bigger corporates. We have Mediala as one of our first customers who was really experimenting with us in the first phase of our product. All journalists are using our product, and we have a lot of small startups as customers, for example, Engager and others. Now, SaaS, I think software as a service, most of the people know what it is, and I think it's important to say it's the least software, and it's always maintained by the creators. It's one of the things where I heard also from Google is where CIOs are still looking into, and they're changing little by little, but it's quite a difficult job to make that mind shift. I think it's a big difference between Europe and US, and that's something we also see at expenditure. And we see, of course, it's changing the whole world of technology. I want to give you also some insights on what I learned and what I think you have to be or have to become really an ideal SaaS startup. The first thing is the product and service have to be core to the operation. So you really have to find there have to be a problem. I think Salesforce is one of the first who really proved that they're doing that. You see Zendesk, you see expenditure. They're solving different problems. Your cost value proposition have to be really straightforward. So you have to be very clear what I'm selling. For example, at expenditure, we always say to an independent, where he only pays €50 a year, you cannot put a lot of time in selling your product to them. We always say, look, when you lose your receipt of your restaurant, your product is already paid back because we have it digitized and so on. So that's a very clear, straightforward thing. Also, you have to finance this at the end. A SaaS startup has to finance its own growth. Of course, in the beginning, it's very, very difficult, and you might need seed capital, you might need venture capital, but it's of course a lot easier in the US than in Europe. But anyhow, you will at one moment you have to do that. To give you an idea, 70% of our customers, we have already thousands of paying users and customers, is that you have to have 70% is coming already from upfront payment. So we get, in fact, our cash upfront. What makes that as a SaaS, you can become easier than others cash break even. Also important is go international as soon as possible. It's something I learned, in fact, from my Netlog days. My little brother Lawrence, who started up something and was booming very big. I think one of the biggest internet companies in Belgium, Netlog. But they were immediately going and translating the site. I would say to everybody, just do that. Translate your site in the world languages, make it multi-language, of course, from day one, and just let it go. It are also things we learned, and from there, that's a very important thing. Also, I'm not a big believer of freemium for B2B customers. I really talk to a lot of other entrepreneurs, also in the US and others. It's very difficult to monetize it when it's in B2B. So a lot of people are a bit afraid, or they want to have, let's say, more a supplier-customer relation. Also, as a SaaS startup, it's quite important to have a potential to become somewhere a market leader. It can be in a small segment, very downsized, very focused, very specialized, but you really need to have it. And you have to search it every day, and it's a very hard job not to go too broad. And to give you an example, for expenditure, we have chosen really for the SME market, so we want to become market leader in SME and bigger SMEs. So yeah, do we have customers of independents? Yes, we have a lot of independents. Every day they're subscribing. Do we have some enterprises? Yes, we have, but it's not our game. Our focus is going to become the market leader on SME. And to give you an idea, I don't know, but Concur just bought, SAP just bought Concur last week for $8.4 billion. They had a net loss of $25 million. Just to give you an idea of. And that was one of the biggest competitors, not really from us, because they're really focused on the enterprises, but how that market is evolving and how SAP is seeing, really was afraid of what's happening with, for example, companies like Concur. Also some insights on some learnings I had the last 3 years to become successful as SaaS startup. Of course, you have to build something that your customers love, and I'm talking here love. They have to brag with it. They have to show off with it. They have to tell it to everybody, and that's really, then you have a real good product. Sometimes I see CEOs who are using the product after the dinner. They're showing their thing. They take a picture of the receipt. People asking, "What are you doing?" "Yeah, we digitize everything." "Oh, what are you doing?" "I'm using Excel and my Scotch tape, and then send it back, and then the whole problem." Then it starts. Then you really. They can brag, they love the product, and they are selling the product. It's very important. High quality, it looks simple, but it's very important. You start serving something, if you see like companies like Google, it's milliseconds, it works, it's a very quality service, and as a SaaS, because you deliver everything, it have to be that. And also you have to meet the expectations day after day. If you don't meet them, your customers are away. We are even implemented the graceful exit, where a customer can say, "I want to exit," and then we will even help him with exiting. For example, quite important when you have receipts, you have very tangible data, so then it's something that we're doing. Another one is sell the best of breed service, not a product. Don't start selling products. It's really a service. It's a total solution. And again, focus to become that leader. And also what we learned is don't go to the consultancy trap. A lot of companies asking us, "Yeah, can we do consultancy? Can we do change management? Can you help us with that?" "Yeah, we want to change because the HRM, they don't want to, can you do more and more?" Yeah, we are not designed for that. And a lot of SaaS startups, they're completely not designed to do consultancy. On the other hand, we sell service packs where we help them using your software, but don't go further. We are now partnering with one of the major consulting firms. I cannot say who, but there are some in the pipe where we will work with. Those guys have people that take on consultancy and work together with specialized firms for that. Also, think pragmatic. It's something I think also from the Google thing, where I learned from the presentation there, and it's a bit in the same level, is you have to think pragmatic. Innovation is by growing and by experimenting. It's not by some smart people in a room. No, it's by doing it. I think best example is what Netflix did. They had a problem with the DVDs. They're just sending the DVDs by mail. Everybody said you're crazy, you're doing that, but it works. But that guy knew already that the digitalization was coming now, and now it's one of the biggest digital video companies in the world, or streaming companies in the world. It's the same with us a bit. For us, for example, very important is having payment data. That get payment data from a bank, they're looking to you. You're not going to integrate. We did it now with Belgaug Bank. Quite heavy integration. We are accessing million users' data, but you need to do a lot of due diligences and checks and this and that. But in fact, everybody knows we need to have the payment data to link with your receipt data. In the US, it's much easier. There are much more open for that. But how we solve that? Just take the picture of your paper statement or from your PDF file. So that's how we're doing it. And in fact, it's quite straightforward. But of course, we know that in through 3-4 years, we will have access to all that data, as banks are more and more opening their walled gardens. Customer service has not to be good, but it has to be outstanding. We are really obsessed by it. So it means with us, everybody knows a customer when he's coming in, even if it's a lead or an inquiry, we have to act in minutes and not in hours. I'm talking minutes. And it's a big difference. For example, a lead that comes in, we try to do it in minutes. It wasn't that easy before we were in the US because then we had some time differences, but it's a big thing. There are a lot of research about that, but if you act in minutes, you have much more chance to close the deal. That's one thing, but also in a service when people have problems and you say, yes, we know, we're working on it, it's a big difference than you leave it for hours there. For every sales or every commercial people, we have one customer care. So we're now about 17, but growing end of this year to 25 people. And it's merely growing now on sales people and business people. That's always the ratio you have to have. Interact with them, and you have to deserve, in fact, your customers every day. Otherwise, they're away. I think one of the other later on the presentations of others, yeah, it's very important using that API ecosystem. We have stunning results of using that. We were trying a lot of marketing and this and that. Yeah, you have to have the mix, and of course, Google search is one of the strongest thing to generate leads. But another one is integrating, for example, with other packages. We have done it with QuickBooks, FreshBooks, Free Agent, and all accounting packages, and we have now. We see there even conversion rates of more than 20%. So people going for a trial and then becoming paying customer. Now 20%, that's stunning. That are huge numbers. And it's in fact with all the accounting packages we integrated with today. And that's something important. And on the API, yeah, you have to of course look for APIs with high reach partners like Google, Dropbox, with others, and then from there building it further. And then later you can always look for other integrations. Also important, and it's one of the fights we do every day in our company, is keep simplicity. You get a lot of inquiries, and people are asking, yeah, can you do that? Can you do that? Yeah, I buy if you can do that. And that's a very important thing. What we learned is no. We have to hear it. We have somewhere a rule in our company. 20 times the same question, and then we start building. Then we start building not in 2 months, no, in 2 weeks. You have to be there. But it's very important that's something. Yeah, normally, yeah, when you're commercial driven, you want to get those customers, but it's a very important trap. You have to think. Some people are the most crazy things. Sometimes they are interesting, but you can never do that. Again, we are working on really short development sprints, about 1 to 2 weeks. Very important, very strict. Doing that so that gives us really huge results and gives us always a head on competition. We do a lot of user testing, and don't be afraid. We do that with. Don't be afraid to do that close, for example, with your customers. I have to say, like my best customer is Medialaan, VMMA. They were in the beginning there, and of course we had some things to tweak, and of course there were things not working. But today it's one of my customers who is giving me other customers, and they are really not 100%, but 150% satisfied. It's just how you manage that. And then always keep the user interface simple. it likes simple, but it's something that we're fighting every day on to add features but keep your user interface easy. Also, something linked with what we learned already is software. Switching software is big, but it's really big for big companies. They're really fear of change. We learned the last thing, and sometimes it's really slowing down your sales as SaaS startup, mainly in B2B. We are trying to avoid RFPs. When you look to normal RFPs, it's interesting, but what you see is they are really looking from a traditional way. You are disruptive, you're innovative, you have something new as SaaS startup, but they're looking, they don't understand, they don't have any reference point towards that software. We don't do that anymore. What we do is we try to convince them, look, can we do a POC, can we do a proof of concept with you? Based on that, we sell that, we give some power guarantees with it, and then based on that, we just show that it works. Because the big problem is, even with CIOs, with others, they don't have the reference point. They're looking to things they don't know yet, or they're not, and then they're afraid. So that step is something very important. And also the bigger companies, they really expect that you do high-touch sales, that you are there, that you're on the phone, that you by mail. And in Europe, for sure, they want to see people. It's less important in the US, but it's very important in Europe. Also, learning is, yeah, partnerships, they're very great, they're nice, we have a lot of them, some with really big brands, big brands, for example, with banks, with payment brands, and they're very good, they help you, but they're very slow, and it takes a lot of time, because they see something, and they like the innovation, and they want to partner, and they want to do marketing, but once it needs time. If you see the successes we do now with Belgaug, it took us a year. We closed now a hospital together with Belgaug, we closed the cities, but it took a year, and to negotiate a thing, it was another half year to get all the due diligence, so it takes time, partnership, but it gives you a huge power and value, and don't look always at both sides to the revenues, but also look to what we call then lead creation and adding value towards both products. Now, what's next? So that are some learnings. What's next? I think you can you see that happening. I was last week a week in the States. Everybody's talking there. I talked with banks like Chase. I talked with MasterCard, and all of them are on big data. I think with Chase they're on hundreds of million euro budgets on really getting big data and understanding what that is. Now for SaaS, it's a huge opportunity. It's something where we are not working on. We are now solving a problem and selling that and try to be good in that. But at the end, a lot of SaaS companies have the potential to become valuable also with the big data. I see there two waves. One wave is gaining more insights to make your product better. It's something that, for example, Uber is doing for real-time pricing. It's also what airliners are doing with big data. Another thing is on big data is really being predictive into your business processes, and also start to make benchmarking, help your customers with aggregated data. And that's also something what's happening in a lot of things, and where a lot of things can happen. An example of that is Safa. It's a SaaS solution for talent management, and they implemented in fact a machine learning algorithm based on the data for customers. And in fact, a lot of SaaS companies also in Europe, they are not aware. It's something where we are not working also on yet, but it's something that is there, and I am a big believer that this is the big second thing of what SaaS will become. Some takeaways, study the sales learning curve, it's very important. Invest in success, everything what you see from success, invest in it. Have smart online marketing. It's for a SaaS startup very important to spend as low as possible in marketing. Keep your customer acquisition cost as low as possible, and use those aggressive online marketing tactics. And then, of course, go for the 6 Ts. I think most of the people know that, but it's the customer lifetime value, your committed multi-recurring revenues, your churn, your cash flow. That's are the very important things that you have to keep in mind. But you need to give it some time to grow. So what is my conclusion on how I see it is that SaaS has, of course, a huge unseen potential. We, as a small startup somewhere in Mechelen, with some good people that work very hard, have something found, and we are now already active in 29 countries. How would that be possible 10 years ago? We just opened offices just because we need to be there, because we're setting up it, but in fact, we already have customers in Australia, in Israel, in Chile, in the Arab world. So, in fact, there are no borders anymore. Now, I'm seeing that a SaaS company, and you have to have really the following phase, and it's for every company in this business. You have to experiment. It's also the potential, also with your existing customers. It really helps you. Learn by failure. In fact, recycle by failure. Dare to do it. Dare to launch it. And have a lot of patience and persistence. It takes time. It's not something. If you look, for example, to Twitter from 2007 to 2009, there was almost nobody on Twitter. And then of 2007, they had their peak. It takes sometimes time, of course. Therefore, it could be that you need some funding, seed capital, others. But I think there are enough parties in Europe upcoming now to support good startups on that. I think this story is a story that is not only for startups. I think Google mentioned this as what they're doing every day. They launch new services, and some they're good, some they're not good. And if they're really not good, then they stop the service. And if they're really good, then they move on further and further and further. And that's something what's the only way for innovation is this way. We could never invent the product expenditure without doing this. Never. Even with some smart people in-house, it's not possible. You have to do it with your customer by the experimentation. So that's it. So I hope you had some ideas, takeaways on what my learnings were on SaaS. And I don't know if there are other questions on this topic.
How did you determine where to go with your international offices?
Yeah, we did some research, but in fact it was also just launched it in 8 languages. And for example, we were like Brazil was one of the countries where was really popping up some big things. We had quote requests from Bridgestone, we had a quote request from Gaz de France, who is really active there. Yeah, it's popping up, and it learned us. Yeah, there is something. Then you go in, you go to first you search, of course. Then you see, yeah, Brazil is a huge market, 200 million people, mid class, very tech savvy, digitizing better even than here already. So it was an interesting market to look into. We went there and we saw, yeah, big opportunities. We talked to customers, and in fact, we started the company, and it's via a joint venture. But that's one thing. And in fact, it's just by doing it. Like I could never expect that 30% of our online customers now are coming from the US the last 3-4 months. I could never know it a year ago because I thought there was much more competition. We, as a software startup in Mechelen, why would a US company in Charlotte sign with us? They do. It's just doing it. And that's also something you just have to do it. You just have to launch it. And then, yeah, work very hard and have enough patience to do that. But I think it's just doing, and then of course we did some investigation like India. That's when you know that their BNP is the same as Benelux. You know already there is no power of zero. The other one is Russia. We looked into, but the most important we were focusing now on Benelux, Germany, US. And Brazil.
I think you mentioned that you don't believe in freemium for B2B.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit in more detail why?
Yeah, because what we learned from there is that a lot of companies, they are a bit afraid. I'm not talking about the small. If you have a bottom-up strategy, it's working very well. For example, your employees going to your CFO and saying, hey, we're using or something, it's very good. But that takes a lot of marketing money. It costs you need to have huge funding to do that, and to do that marketing effort. And what we learned here, mainly in Europe, I think it's a little bit different in the US, but here in Europe, it's not working because that CIO is already, oh, it's SaaS, but then you already, it's free. And then what is happening, because we learned, for example, we have to keep the receipt for 7 years because you have tax control and so on. So there are some legal things binded to your service, and then that's one of the things. And also when they don't pay, they don't think there is really a relation between the customer and the supplier. That's the learning we had. Now it's a bit different in the US, but still, for example, one of our competitors in the US, Expensify, they are changing also their model. They were on freemium, but you see them changing to paying because I believe in freemium for B2B when you can partner up with somebody who has a huge mass of audience. Then it could work. Where you have already the audience and you plug it in, and then it could work. But doing it like that here for B2B, it's my personal. I didn't see that no big successes yet.
There was some hassle in the press. These Belgaug moved to the US and it kind of said startups, if they want to go fast, you better do it out of the US. What's your opinion on that?
I'm a big believer doing it here. I really want to prove it also. Something in my second mission to really prove that you can really entrepreneur here. Now, what is important is getting the money, finding the investments. We have the luck to have very powerful investors, private investors. We don't have any VC, but we just added another million last week. So we already invested 2.8 million euro into the company. But I want to prove that once you get it here in Europe, and there is enough money also in Belgium for doing that, if you get it, you can do it and you can grow. My competitor, he just started with $1 million. 6 months later, he get another $10 million, and then that's how it goes there. Now here we do it with less, but even for Belgian terms already a lot. And we want to prove that it's possible, that you can do it. And I'm a big believer. You don't have to go. My former people in my team, Peter Jan, who is now from Showpad, who is now there. The same with Volker from Engager. They go. It's good that they go there, but and I was there also, and yes, it goes 10 times faster than here. But do you really need to be there? I think from here you can do it, and of course you can set up an office. But I want to keep the core in Belgium, the whole team here, and then setting up the further offices. So I don't think that for every startup necessary to go to the US. But be there, of course, and do their business there, yes. But really setting up in Silicon Valley, it's not. I don't think it's necessary. The only thing is the capital. Finding capital have to become easier, but I think like Ayman's doing a lot on that, and others. There are new initiatives like Volta, also Google Ventures. I think everybody is trying to set that up more, but it needs more, some more push here to improve.